Close your eyes for a moment and consider this 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, and hardwired beliefs. You are operating on a subconscious program. You wake up, you reach for your phone, you check your messages, you feel a bit of stress, and right there, in the first 10 minutes of your day, you have already stepped into the personality of the old you. If you want to create a new life, a new reality, you have to fundamentally change your personality. But here is the hurdle: your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Close your eyes for a moment and consider the profound architectural structure of your daily existence. People wake up in the morning and the very first thing they do is search for a familiar feeling of themselves. Before you even get out of bed, your brain begins a subconscious scan of your personal reality. You begin to think about your problems. Problems are connected to certain people, certain places, and specific objects at certain times. The moment you start thinking about those problems, you are no longer in the present moment. You are traveling into the past. One of those memories has an emotional charge associated with it. Maybe it's the sting of a past failure, the weight of a current debt, or the frustration of a stagnant relationship. Thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. The moment you experience those emotions, your body literally believes it is back in that past experience. The brain is a record of the past, artifact of everything you have learned and experienced up to this point. So if you wake up every morning and start your day by remembering your problems, you are starting your day in the past. Your brain is firing in the same sequences, the same patterns, same combinations as it did yesterday. This creates a signature of neural activity that reinforces the same personality you've had for years. When you fire and wire the same circuits repeatedly, you begin to hardwire your brain into a very specific signature. Signature becomes your identity, but it goes deeper than just your thoughts. As you think those familiar thoughts, they produce the same chemicals that make you feel the same way you felt yesterday. Once you feel that way, you generate more thoughts that match that feeling, which then produces more chemicals to keep the feeling going. This creates a closed loop where the body and mind are constantly reinforcing a state of being that is rooted entirely in what has already happened. Time, most people are midway through their lives. 95% of who they are is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, and hardwired beliefs that function like a computer program. You might consciously say you want to be happy, or you want to be healthy, or you want to be wealthy, but your body is on a completely different frequency. Your body has been conditioned to be the servant of the past. It is seeking the familiar, even if the familiar is painful, because the body craves the chemical hit of those familiar emotions, even the negative ones like guilt, shame, or unworthiness, because at least those feelings are predictable. To the body, the unknown is a terrifying place. Rather stay in a familiar state of suffering than risk the uncertainty of a new, joyful state. This is why people find themselves stuck in the same cycles, meeting the same types of people, and hitting the same financial ceilings. They are trying to create a new life while still being the same person. You cannot create a new future while your feet are firmly planted in the past. If your morning routine consists of reaching for your phone, checking your social media, reading your emails, rushing a shower to get to a job you don't like, you are living in a predictable timeline. You are a victim of your environment. You are allowing the outer world to dictate how you think and feel internally. To change, be greater than your environment. You must be greater than the conditions in your life. Most people wait for a crisis, a trauma, or a diagnosis to finally decide to change. They wait for the external world to force them to look inward. But why wait for the tragedy? You can choose to change in a state of joy and inspiration rather than a state of pain and suffering. To begin this process, you have to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. You have to observe yourself with such clarity that you don't let a single thought slip past your awareness that you don't want to experience. You have to look at your automatic behaviors and see them for what they are: scripts that you've been running for decades. You have to look at the emotion you've memorized and realize that they are just chemical records of the past. When you begin to pull your attention away from the outer world and the familiar past, you begin to take your power back. You are no longer giving your energy to the people and things that keep you tethered to the old version of yourself. You are beginning the process of dismantling the old self to make room for the new. This requires an act of will that is greater than your biology. Requires you to sit down and decide that your internal world is more real than the world outside of you. When you start to change your internal state, you change your energy, And when you change your energy, you change your life. You are moved from being a creation of your past to becoming the creator of your future, shifting from the passenger seat of your life into the driver's seat, where you finally have the power to steer toward a reality that is no longer a repetition of yesterday. Consider the biological reality that the body does not know the difference between an actual experience in your outer world and an emotion you create by thought alone through internal imagery. A fundamental shift in understanding how we function as human beings, because it reveals that the body is, in fact, the objective mind. It is so objective that it accepts whatever you feed it emotionally as the absolute truth of the present moment. You sit in your chair and begin to ruminate on a past resentment, bringing up the bitterness, the heat in your chest, and the tightness in your shoulders. Your brain immediately sends a signal to your body that you are currently being mistreated. Your pituitary gland and your anal glands begin to pump out the chemicals of stress, cortisol, and adrenaline, as if the event were happening right now. Your heart rate increases, your digestion shuts down, and your immune system is suppressed. Your body is physically living in a reality that no longer exists, simply because you are thinking a thought that triggers a memorized emotion. This is the definition of being trapped by the body as the mind. When you repeat this process for 10, 20, the body becomes more than just a vessel. It becomes the pilot of your life. It has memorized the state of suffering or lack so well that it knows how to produce that state better than the conscious mind knows how to do anything else. You have conditioned your body to be a storehouse of the past. When the body becomes the mind, you are no longer in control. You might consciously decide on January 1st that you are going to be a person of discipline, health, and abundance. By the third day of the month, your body starts communicating with your brain. It says, "Why are you doing this? This feels uncomfortable. Let's go back to being lazy. Let's go back to being angry." The body has been conditioned to the chemical hit of your old personality. It starts to influence your thoughts to justify staying the same. Your body is craving its familiar chemical fix. Use your own voice in your head to convince you to quit. It will say, "I'll start tomorrow," or "It's too hard," or "I don't feel like it." The moment you agree with that thought, you have returned to the old self. You have surrendered your conscious will to the subconscious programming of the body. To truly change, you have to realize that the feeling of being you is actually a chemical addiction. Most people are addicted to the hormones of stress, using the problems in their lives to reaffirm their emotional state. They need their enemies to feel righteous anger. They need their failures to feel self-pity. Without these external triggers, they don't know who they are. This is why change is so difficult. Just a psychological shift. It is a physiological overhaul. You are literally breaking an addiction to the old self. If you want to move into a new life, you have to be willing to walk through the fire of chemical withdrawal. When you decide to no longer think the same thoughts or feel the same feelings, the body sends a frantic signal to the brain, trying to get you to return to the status quo. It is at this precise moment, the moment of greatest discomfort, that the real work begins. You must stand as a conscious observer of these impulses and tell the body that it is no longer the mind. You must reassert your role as the master. This requires you to move beyond the analytical mind, which often keeps us stuck in the problem. Enter the operating system where the subconscious programs live. If you are trying to change while remaining in the same emotional state, it is like trying to install new software on a corrupted hard drive. The hardware simply won't support the new information. You have to clean the drive first by teaching the body what a new emotion feels like before the event occurs. If you can begin to signal new genes in new ways, you can actually change the physical structure of your body and your brain. You sit still and begin to practice the emotion of gratitude, the ultimate state of receivership. Your body begins to believe that whatever you are grateful for has already happened. Gratitude is the chemical signature that an event has taken place. When you can embody the feeling of your future wealth, your future health, or your future relationship before it shows up in your 3D world, you are no longer waiting for your life to change so you can feel good. You are feeling good, for your life must change to match your internal frequency. You are moving from a state of wanting, which is a state of lack, to a state of being. When you are in a state of being, you are no longer seeking, you are attracting. You have become a magnet for a new reality because your body is no longer a record of the past, but a map to the future. You are training your body to follow your mind into a new destiny, breaking the chains of the old personality that kept you repeating the same year over and over again. This is the mastery of the self, the ability to make your thoughts more real than the physical world, and to command the body to follow the spirit into the unknown. To truly understand why your life remains a repetitive loop of yesterday's news, you must confront the reality of the river of change. This is the space between the old self and the new self, a psychological and physiological void that most people find absolutely terrifying. When you decide to cross this river, you are making a conscious choice to no longer think the same thoughts, perform the same actions, or live by the same predictable emotions. You are stepping away from the known territory of your old personality and venturing into the unknown. For most of us, the known is a very comfortable place, even if it is a place of suffering, lack, or unhappiness. We have spent years, perhaps decades, constructing a persona that is reinforced by every person we talk to, every place we go, and every routine we follow. When you decide to break that cycle, you are effectively dismantling the very foundation of who you think you are. Transition creates a profound sense of disorientation. The moment you stop the habitual behaviors that define your day, your body begins to protest. It feels as though you are losing your identity, and in a very real sense, you are. Moving through the death of the old self. And that death is not a metaphor. It is a neurological and chemical reality. The discomfort you feel when you try to change is actually the sound of your old programs breaking. Most people, the moment they hit that wall of discomfort, interpret as something being wrong. They think, this doesn't feel right, or I don't feel like myself anymore. Their immediate reaction is to reach for something familiar to stop the feeling of uncertainty. Pick up the phone to call the person they usually complain to, or they jump on social media to see what everyone else is doing, or they return to the habits that give them a temporary sense of security. The second they do that, stepped back onto the shore of the old self. They have retreated from the river of change because the vacuum of the unknown was too much to bear. But if you can understand that this void is not a place of lack, rather the very place where creativity begins, you can start to stay in it longer. This is the gap where the old personality is no longer active and the new one hasn't yet materialized. The only place where you are truly free from the constraints of your past. In the unknown, all possibilities exist. If you are always living in the predictable known, then you are living in a world where the future is just a recycled version of the past. To have a new life, you must be willing to inhabit the void and become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Think of it as a biological remodeling. When you stop firing and wiring the old circuits, the brain starts to prune away the connections that no longer serve you. At the same time, because you aren't feeding the old emotions, your body begins to go through a period of detoxification from the stress hormones it has been addicted to. Is why the river of change feels like a crisis. It is a withdrawal process. Your body is screaming for its chemical fix of guilt, anxiety, or unworthiness because it has used those chemicals to define its existence. If you can stay in that space and not give in to the urge to return to the old state of being, you begin to reclaim your energy. You stop leaking your power to the past. You start to realize that the person you were was just a collection of memorized reactions. You have the authority to choose a different set of reactions. This requires a tremendous amount of awareness. You have to be the observer of your own mind. You have to watch the thoughts that tell you to give up. You have to see them as nothing more than old software trying to reinstall itself. You have to tell the body, no, I am the master here, and we are staying in this river until we reach the other side. Crossing this river means you are no longer defined by your external circumstances. You are no longer a victim of what is happening out there. Instead, you are becoming defined by a vision of the future that you haven't yet seen with your eyes, that you have felt with your heart. This is the transition from living in stress to living in creation. When you are in the middle of that river, you have no evidence that anything is changing. Your bank account might look the same. Your body might still feel the same pains, and your relationships might still be messy. This is the ultimate test of faith. Can you believe in a reality that you cannot yet perceive with your senses? If you can maintain your internal state regardless of the environment, you are finally free. You are no longer a record of the past. You are a map to the future. But transition is where the magic happens because it is the only time you are truly in the present moment. The old you is in the past and the new you is in the future. And right there in the middle of the river is the point of power. Time you catch yourself wanting to turn back and you choose to stay, you are weakening the old self and strengthening the new one. You are teaching your body that it can survive the unknown. And eventually the unknown starts to feel like home. It becomes this where you realize that you aren't your problems, you aren't your past, and you aren't your limitations. You are the consciousness that is observing it all. And from that place, You can build anything you desire. Consider the invisible threads that bind you to your current reality, threads woven by the environment you inhabit every single day. Most people believe they are thinking independently, but in reality, their environment is controlling their thinking. If you wake up in the same bed, walk into the same kitchen, drink from the same mug, and drive the same route to a job where you see the same people and perform the same tasks, your external world is constantly reminding you of who you think you are. Of these external stimuli, the people, the places, the objects, and the timing of your routines is mapped to a specific neurological network in your brain. Because you are seeing the same things and doing the same things, networks are being fired and wired with relentless consistency. Your environment is essentially a giant mirror reflecting your old personality back at you. If you believe that your thoughts and feelings have anything to do with your destiny, you are thinking and feeling exactly the same way as a response to the same environment. You are essentially recreating the same life over and over again. You have become a victim of the world outside of you, rather than the creator of the world within you. Challengeable transformation lies in the fact that we are often seduced into believing that our outer reality is more real than our inner reality. We look at our bank accounts, our physical health, or our relationship status. We allow those physical facts to dictate our emotional state. If the bank account is low, we feel lack. If the body is in pain, we feel suffering. If the relationship is failing, we feel unloved. In this scenario, your environment is the cause and your internal state is the effect. This is a very primitive way of living. It is living in a state of survival where you are constantly reacting to the world around you. To truly change your life, you have to reach a point where your internal state of being is greater than the conditions of your environment. You have to be able to close your eyes and disconnect from the sensory input of the world, the sights, the sounds, the smells, physical sensations, and move into a space where your imagination becomes more real than the room you are sitting in. If you cannot think greater than how you feel, or greater than what you see in your current circumstances, are doomed to stay in the same loop. Most of us are so enamored by the 3D world that we forget we are the ones who assigned meaning to it in the first place. Every person you interact with has a specific spot in your brain associated with an emotion. When you see your difficult boss or your demanding spouse, you automatically trigger the emotion associated with them. This happens so fast that it's subconscious. Before you've even said a word, your body has already moved into a state of stress or defense. Your environment is literally pulling the strings of your biology. This is why people find it so hard to change when they stay in the same town, the same house, or the same social circles. The environment acts as a constant trigger for the old self. To break free, cultivate an internal environment that is so vivid and so emotionally charged that the external world begins to lose its grip on you. You have to be able to hold a vision of your future self with such clarity and conviction that your brain begins to look like the change has already occurred. This is the act of being greater than the environment. It is the ability to maintain a state of joy, gratitude, or power, even when the world around you is giving you every reason to feel the opposite. When you start to master your internal state, something remarkable happens. You start being a person who is reacting to life, and you start being a person who is responding from a place of intention. You no longer need the world to change so that you can feel better. You feel better first. The world begins to reorganize itself to match your new frequency. This is the reversal of the traditional model of reality. Instead of waiting for the success to feel powerful, you feel powerful now. Instead of waiting for the healing to feel whole, you feel whole now. By doing this, you are no longer a slave to your surroundings. You are no longer defined by your problems or your past. You are beginning to live in a future that you have designed internally. The environment will try to pull you back, try to remind you of your limitations and your old failures. It will offer you the same temptations and the same dramas. But when you are greater than your environment, you see these things for what they are: tests of your commitment to the new self. You realize that if you allow your environment to dictate your internal state, you have given away your power. To keep your power, you must remain the master of your thoughts and feelings, regardless of what is happening in the world around you. This is the true meaning of being a creator. It is the realization that the world there is simply a lagging reflection of the world here. And if you want the reflection to change, you must first change the person standing in front of the mirror. It requires you to wake up every day and consciously decide that you will not let your environment win. You will not let the traffic or the weather or the news or the opinions of others decide who you are going to be. You decide who you are going to be. You hold that state with such unwavering focus that the environment has no choice but to transform in your presence. Consider the power of mental rehearsal and the profound neurological shift that occurs when you begin to inhabit a future reality before it has physically manifested. Most people use their imagination to rehearse their worst case scenarios, playing out scenes of failure, rejection, or illness over and over in their minds. When you do this, you are effectively priming your brain and body to stay anchored in the old personality. The brain does not distinguish between the thoughts you are thinking and the reality you are experiencing. However, when you flip this process and begin to consciously rehearse the future you desire, you are engaging in a form of neurological engineering. You are literally installing the hardware in your brain to look like the event has already occurred. This is not just positive thinking or wishful dreaming. It is a deliberate act of changing your biology. If you sit down and close your eyes, you begin to mentally rehearse an action, like walking into a room with total confidence, or speaking your truth with clarity, or performing a skill with mastery. The same circuits in your brain fire as if you were physically doing it. You keep doing this day after day. You begin to hardwire those circuits. You are making the brain a map to the future rather than a record of the past. But the secret to making this rehearsal stick is the marriage of a clear intention with an elevated emotion. You cannot simply think the thought of being successful while feeling the same old emotion of unworthiness. Those two signals are on different frequencies, and they cancel each other out. To change your life, you have to teach your body emotionally what that future feels like before it happens. You have to experience the gratitude, the joy, and the freedom of your new life so deeply that your body begins to believe it is in that new reality right now. Why is this so important? Because the moment you feel the emotion of the event, you are no longer waiting for it to happen. You have moved out of the state of wanting and into the state of having. In the quantum field, where all possibilities exist as electromagnetic signatures, you are now broadcasting a signal that is a perfect match for that future reality. You are no longer chasing your dreams, you are drawing them to you. You are becoming a magnet for the very things you used to think were out of your reach, all because you had the courage to rehearse the feeling of them until they became your natural state of being. This process requires you to go beyond your senses. Your senses will tell you that you are still in the same room, in the same body at the same time. If you listen to your senses, you will fall back into the old personality. You have to become no body, no thing, where in no time. You have to get so caught up in the internal rehearsal that you lose track of your physical surroundings. When you reach that state, you are at your most creative. You are no longer a victim of the 3D world. You are an architect in the 5D world of pure potential. Think about the great pioneers of history, the inventors, the explorers, the leaders who changed the world. They all had one thing in common. They held onto a vision of a future that did not yet exist, as if that vision were already a reality. They didn't wait for the physical evidence to show up before they felt the passion for their work. Their passion was the very thing that created the evidence. They rehearsed their success so many times in their minds that when it finally happened in the physical world, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. They had already been there 1,000 times before. When you start to rehearse your future self, notice that your behavior begins to change automatically. You start to walk differently, talk differently, and make different choices. You are no longer being driven by the old programs of the past. You are being pulled by a vision of the future. Habits of procrastination, self-doubt, and fear begin to fall away because they no longer fit the new neurological hardware you have installed. You are literally becoming a different person. How you break the cycle of creating the same life over and over again. You stop trying to change the life, and you start to change the life, and you start changing the self. Once the self is changed, the life must follow, because the life is just an externalization of your personality. If you spend your time rehearsing the person you want to be, and you do it with enough intensity and consistency, you will eventually reach a tipping point where the new personality becomes the dominant program. You will wake up one day and realize that you are no longer reacting to the world in the same way. You are no longer the person who is afraid or limited. You are someone new, someone who was forged in the fire of your own imagination and brought to life through the power of emotional rehearsal. You have taken the steering wheel of your evolution and decided that you will no longer be a record of what has been, living testament to what is possible. Consider the biological reality of addiction, not to a substance like a drug or alcohol, but to the very chemicals produced by your own stress response. people do not realize that they are literally addicted to their own unhappiness, their own resentment, and their own sense of lack. When you experience a stressful event, your body perceives a threat and initiates the fight or flight response, releasing a cocktail of high energy hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These chemicals provide a temporary rush of energy. They sharpen your senses and prepare you for survival. However, we are the only species on Earth that can trigger the stress response by thought alone. We can keep that internal fire burning indefinitely. We think about a confrontation we had yesterday, or we worry about a meeting we have tomorrow. Body stays in a constant state of emergency. Over time, the body becomes habituated to this high chemical state. Just like a person addicted to a stimulant, your cells begin to crave the rush of these stress hormones just to feel alive. It is why you might find yourself subconsciously looking for problems to solve, people to argue with, or reasons to feel victimized. You aren't doing it because you enjoy the pain. You are doing it because your body is demanding its chemical fix. Addiction to the past is the primary reason why your old personality keeps creating the same life. You use the people and conditions in your life to reaffirm your emotional addiction. You use your boss to feel anger. You use your ex-partner to feel guilt. Use your finances to feel anxiety. If you were to remove those problems, your body would actually go into a state of withdrawal. It would feel empty, lost, and unfamiliar. This is why so many people, when things finally start going well, unconsciously sabotage their own success. They create a new problem just to return to the emotional state they are used to. They are more comfortable being miserable than they are being in the unknown, because misery has a chemical signature they recognize. To break this cycle, you have to recognize that your emotions are nothing more than a record of the past. Every time you feel that familiar sting of self-pity or that rush of judgment, you are looking at the world through the lens of a person who no longer exists. Yet you are bringing that person into the present moment. You are using the present moment to refuel the past. Breaking an addiction to the self requires a level of self-awareness that most people never develop. You have to become so vigilant that you catch yourself in the middle of a thought or a feeling and realize that it is not you. It is just a program. You have to be able to say to yourself, feeling of unworthiness is just a chemical habit that I have practiced for 20 years. When you start to observe the emotion, rather than being the emotion, you begin to settle the body down. You are no longer the prisoner. You are the jailer who has found the keys. This process is intensely difficult because the body will fight you. It will tell you that you are being unrealistic, that you are being irresponsible, or that you are failing. Use your own analytical mind to try and talk you back into the old state of being. It wants you to stay in the familiar territory of the survival hormones because, from a biological standpoint, survival is safe. But survival is not creation. You cannot create a new future while you are in a state of emergency. In survival, you are always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You are always looking for the threat. To move into a state of creation, you have to signal to the body that the threat is over, means you must learn to generate an internal state that is not dependent on anything outside of you. If you need a reason to be happy, you are still a victim of your environment. If you need a reason to feel successful, you are still living in cause and effect. True mastery is the ability to cause and effect. It is the ability to feel the gratitude and the abundance of your future before any of it has actually happened. When you can do this, you are breaking the addiction to the past. You are telling your body that the new event has already occurred, and therefore, it no longer needs the chemicals of stress to survive. You are replacing the hormones of survival with the chemicals of growth and repair. You are moving from a state of contraction to a state of expansion. This is where your energy begins to change, and as your energy changes, the people and opportunities in your life will begin to change to match you. You will no longer be attracted to the same dramas or the same toxic cycles because you are no longer the person who was fueled by them. You have broken the bond with the old self, and in doing so, you have finally given yourself the permission to step into a reality that is no longer a shadow of your history. To truly step into a new life, you must reach the pinnacle of the creative process, which is the ability to become no body, no thing, nowhere, time. This may sound abstract, but is the most practical biological state a human being can achieve if they wish to escape the prison of a repetitive identity. Think about your life as it stands right now. Your day is spent being a somebody. You have a name, a profession, a history, a physical body with certain acres or attributes, and a specific set of relationships. You occupy a certain space in your home or office, constantly aware of the passage of time, the deadlines, the schedules, and the ticking clock of your age. All of these elements constitute your local identity. They are the anchors that keep you moored to the 3D world of predictable results. Your attention is on your body, your problems, your location, and your timeline. You are keeping your energy bound to the old personality. To change your life, you have to take your attention off the known and place it on the unknown. You have to move from being a somebody in a world of some things to being nobody in a field of no thing. When you close your eyes and disconnect from the sensory input of your environment, you begin to silence the neural circuits that remind you of who you are. The moment you take your attention off your pain, your hunger, or your appearance, you become nobody. When you take your attention off your boss, your children, and your bank account, you become no thing. When you stop worrying about where you need to be or the chair you are sitting in, you become nowhere. And when you finally stop obsessing over what happened yesterday or what might happen 10 minutes from now, fall to the eternal present moment, which is no time. Why is this state so vital? It is because when you are no body, no thing, nowhere, in no time, you are no longer a personality. You are pure consciousness. You have moved beyond the veil of the physical senses and entered the unified field, the quantum field of all possibilities. This is the place where all potential futures exist as electromagnetic signatures. In this space, separation between you and your dreams. There is no distance to travel and no time to wait. Everything exists in the eternal. Now, people fail to create a new life because they try to create as a somebody. They try to heal their body while they are still focused on the pain in their body. They try to create wealth while they are still focused on the lack in their bank account. You cannot create a new reality from the same level of consciousness that created your current one. You have to leave the old self behind at the door. You have to enter the void of the unknown as a blank slate. This is the moment of true surrender. The moment where you stop trying to force, control, and predict, and you start to trust the frequency of the field. When you are in this state of pure awareness, you are no longer a victim of your biology or your past, or the observer who is choosing a new potential from an infinite array of outcomes. You are literally folding space and time, drawing your future to you rather than waiting for it to happen in some distant, linear version of tomorrow. The more you can linger in the space of nothingness, the more you realize that the nothingness is actually everything. It is the womb of creation. In this void, you begin to experience a sense of wholeness that is not dependent on anything outside of you. When you are no longer defined by your external roles or your past traumas, you feel a profound sense of liberation. There's the state of being that precedes all doing. If you can stay in this frequency and then begin to imagine your new life from this place of wholeness, the signal you send out is incredibly powerful. You are no longer asking for something from a place of lack. You are experiencing it as a reality within the field of consciousness. You are becoming a different person at the most fundamental level of your energy. Finally, open your eyes and return to the world of some bodies and some things. You are not the same person who sat down to meditate. You have changed your neurological signature. You have changed your emotional frequency, left the old personality in the void and brought a new version of yourself back into the 3D world. Now, instead of you chasing your life begins to chase you. Synchronicities, chance encounters, unexpected opportunities begin to show up because you are no longer broadcasting the signal of your past. You are broadcasting the signal of a new destiny, and the universe has no choice but to respond to the new person you have become. This is the ultimate freedom, the realization that you are not a record of your history, but a consciousness that can reinvent itself at any moment by simply stepping out of the known and into the infinite potential of the unknown. So the question you must ask yourself as you leave this moment is simple. Who do you want to be when you open your eyes tomorrow? Most people will wake up and immediately surrender their power to the old, familiar landscape of their problems and their past, reach for the same emotions, react to the same triggers, and unknowingly build another day that looks exactly like yesterday. But you now understand the mechanics of the trap. You know that your personality creates your personal reality. To change your life, you must undergo the fundamental process of changing the self. This is not a task for the faint of heart. It is a labor of love toward your own potential. It requires you to be more in love with your future than you are with your past. It demands that you become the conscious architect of your internal world, choosing thoughts and feelings that align with the destiny you desire rather than the history you've endured. When you finally decide to stop being a victim of your biology and start being the master of your energy, you cross the threshold from survival into creation. The world there will eventually catch up to the change. Here. You don't have to wonder how it will happen or when it will happen. Your only job is to stay in that new state of being until it becomes more real to you than the old one. You can maintain that internal frequency regardless of the conditions of your environment. The synchronicities, the miracles, and the new opportunities will find you. You will no longer be the person waiting for your life to change. You will be the person whose presence changes the life around them. Step out of the predictable, leave the old identity in the void, and walk into the unknown with the absolute certainty that the person you are becoming is already here.